Toastmasters, the distancing version. We are hopefully getting a little bit closer week by week to meeting in person at some point, but for now we maintain the Zoom environment. And I want to let you know that I will be your Zoom facilitator for the evening. So if you have any questions or problems, issues, that type of thing, you can go ahead and shoot a private chat to me. My name is Rob Giles. You should be able to see that in the bottom left corner, or bottom left corner on my square. And I'm going to go over a few ground rules for us. One, and this is something that Mark Sims points out because I generally forget to point out, and that is for our guests and any members that may not be recalling properly. This is our applause. So just put your hands up, twist them, shake them a little bit. That's our applause. I'm not going to be doing any normal applause. So when there is need for applause, go ahead and do the old hand wave. When you're not speaking, keep yourself on mute. When you do speak, take yourself off of mute. And then when you're finished speaking, put yourself back on mute. Our posture monitor, counter, you're welcome to keep yourself off mute. Try to keep that background noise to a minimum. If you have a noise that you're going to be making, clicking, some sort of clicking from your phone, whatever you want to do, the posture monitor, a bell, whatever. If you're not going to be doing those, then just keep yourself muted and take the notes for the report as normal. I think that is it for the ground rules for that. You want to make sure if you are speaking, whether it's prepared speeches, table topic speeches, or evaluations, to recognize who the timer is for this evening, and you'll find out soon. And then go ahead and pin them to your screen, or just make sure that they're visible while you're speaking so you can see what your timing is and you can stay within your time objective. At this point, I'm going to show you and share with you our agenda for the evening. Oh boy, guess what? I got to load that up. Okay, so our agendas can be found on our website, which is www.DallasSocialToastmasters.org, .com. Shifting us to a nonprofit. So we are at DallasSocialToastmasters.com. And on our website, as you'll see right here, you can see the member section over toward the right-hand side. And one of the links that are listed in that section is current agenda. If you click on that, it will pull up our agenda for the evening. And it will show up here in a second. My dial-up is not working 100% yet tonight. I don't even see any smirks from that, but okay. Maybe it's just annoyance. Let's see if we can get this rolling here. There we go. There we go.
That noise?
Yes, I heard it in the background. The whole. So there you go. There's the agenda for the evening. Again, it's on our website, DallasSocialToastmasters.com, and go to the members section and click on current agenda. It will pop up. You can either print that out, keep it just up on your screen so you can refer to it as the meeting goes along. But there you have it. I will now go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and I will pass the meeting over to our club president for the introduction of guests. Please help me welcome Mr. Mark Sims.
Thank you, Rob. And it's a pleasure to see guests tonight, returning guest, Munish Gupta. And thank you to Michael Friedman. I don't think I've met you before, so we appreciate you being here tonight. So just enjoy the program. And Mark Schroeder has just chatted me that Mr. Funmi, let me scroll down.
That's actually Ms.
Okay, I'm not, okay.
Another guest.
Miss Funmi, well, thank you very much for attending too. And especially for Michael and Funmi, what we'll do is after the meeting, we'll hear from you, what you thought about the meeting, get to know you a little bit. And for the rest of the time, just enjoy being here. We appreciate it. And at this time, I would like to introduce our Toastmaster for the evening, Lee King.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters. Welcome to another meeting. And tonight's theme is spring. We definitely have had our fair share of winter and things are starting to warm up. So I thought spring would be a good theme for tonight. Not only that, but we will even be setting our clocks ahead on Saturday. We'll be springing forward this weekend. And some schools have been out for spring break and other schools are going to be going on spring break next week, along with St. Patrick's Day. So a lot of good times coming, hopefully. Hopefully the spring will be better than last spring. Last spring, of course, as many of y'all know, it was exactly 365 days ago that we sprung ourselves right into isolation. So hopefully this time around we'll be able to get out of isolation and move around a little bit. With that, I will go ahead and introduce our duty holders for this evening. Our first duty holder will be Mark Sims, who will be timer and grammarian. Mark, will you please share your role?
As timer, I will track the times in the various speaking portions of the meeting. For example, prepared speeches are generally 5 to 7 minutes, not always. At the minimum time period, we'll display this green card. Midway between the minimum and maximum, I will display a yellow card. At the maximum time, I will display this red card, which means the speaker has 30 seconds to finish. And I will, again, track the times and report when called upon. And then likewise, I'll also be timing the table topics where you have to speak for a minimum of 1 minute, a maximum of 2 minutes and 30 seconds, including a grace period. And I'll also track the timing of speech evaluations where you have to speak a minimum of 2 minutes, a maximum of 3 minutes and 30 seconds, including the grace period. As far as my role as grammarian, I'll be listening for any type of grammatical lapses. I'll also be listening for any interesting phrases that improve your communications. And I will introduce the word of the day. Word of the day is mundane. Now, this is something you really don't want to be told that you are, is mundane. It's kind of dull. It's not very exciting. It's maybe its best usage is that it's a polite way to put someone down. If I give a presentation at work, instead of someone saying, boy, Mark sure was dry today, someone could say, well, it was a little mundane. But it's definitely a good word to have in your arsenal. So again, an adjective, mundane, lacking interest or excitement, or dull. And please use this as frequently as you can in the meeting, and especially in the table topics portion of the meeting, you will need to use that word in order to be able to try and win the competition. Mr. Toastmaster.
All right, great, thank you. Our next duty holder for this evening is our vote counter. Paul, will you please introduce your role for us?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. So as vote counter, I will tally up the votes from the audience for each of the different categories, including the featured speakers, the table topics, as well as the best of the big three. And I will announce the winners for each of those aforementioned categories at the end of the meeting. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. Please remember, as we ask for votes, to send a private message to Paul, and he will tabulate those votes. Our next duty holder for this evening will be Mark Schroeder, who's our all counter. Mark, will you please share your role?
Sure. Sorry, just checking that I was not on mute. As our counter, part of what I'm going to be doing this evening is listening for anything that is a verbal crutch, things like anything that I hear that detracts from the message that you're trying to convey. I'm going to make a note of all of the things that I do here and provide a report at the end of the meeting. We would normally actually make a noise, but Zoom does not catch the noises quickly enough to make it obvious that I have clicked anything, so I will probably remain silent for the meeting. Even during the prepared speeches, we would normally be silent anyway, so we're going to treat almost everything as a prepared speech and just give a report at the end of the meeting. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. And our final role for this evening is posture monitor by Cheryl Slagle. Cheryl, will you please share roles with us?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. As the posture monitor, I'll be watching all speakers to identify unusual or distracting postures such as hands in pockets, hair flipping, or other distracting gestures. When I notice these slips, I will keep track of the posture in writing and will report the results at the end of the meeting when called upon by the general evaluator. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. Just before jumping into our prepared speeches for this evening, a lot of times people do different things over spring break. Some things they cherish and always want to remember. And then, of course, because people are in college, they do things during spring break that they really don't want to remember. Or they don't remember because, well, they had a little too much to drink. But is there anybody here that just has something that they remember from a spring break that they'd like to share with the group? All right. Must be a quiet evening then.
Well, Lee, I
Yes.
don't recall having spring breaks when I was young. So I think that's something that's happened maybe the last couple of decades. So
Oh,
when I was old enough, I probably had to work during spring breaks. So I'm really bad off.
well, interestingly enough, it's interesting that you point that out because there are several universities throughout the country right now that have actually done away with spring break this year because of COVID. The thought was that by having spring break, college students would conglomerate and have far from mundane parties, and they would come back to the college campus and COVID would spread very rapidly. So a lot of colleges this year have done away with spring break, and in lieu, they're actually getting out a week early. So I thought that was interesting. With that, we will go ahead and go on into our prepared speeches for this evening. And I will introduce Rob Giles, who will be introducing John Vessels to us. So Rob.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster. John will be working out of the visionary communication path, if my memory is correct. And he's working on a project titled Connect with Storytelling. The purpose of his project is to practice using a story within a speech or giving a speech that is a story. He's to complete this project and focus on using stories in a speech or creating that speech as a story, as just said, and use any type of story, personal, well-known fiction, or one of his own creation. I'll be listening for a well-organized speech that is a story or includes a story. His speech time is 5 to 7 minutes for our timer, and his title is Misadventures with Fred. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Please help me welcome John Vessels with about his speech title will be Misadventures with Fred. Misadventures with Fred, John Vessels.
Well, thank you, everybody. I want to tell you about one of my many misadventures with Fred. Fred was my best friend when I lived in Amarillo from my 20s to my early 30s. And we had a lot of adventures, and most of them were misadventures. There was nothing mundane about being friends with Fred. I'm come to mind one story that I wanted to tell you about. And I don't know if somebody has heard this. I can't remember if I've told this one before. But Fred's wife had some horses, and she was all into the horses. And so she got this idea to get this horse walker that some man had for sale up in Fritch, which is about 40 miles from Amarillo. And so Fred asked me, because I had the truck, if I'd go help him pick up this horse walker. I said, well, okay. As usual, I usually just say, yeah, let's do it. Anyway, so got off work at 5 o'clock. We had to go to U-Haul and pick up a trailer. Now, the trailer he got us was one of those little 4-foot by 8-foot open trailers. I didn't know why we were going to need it, but he said we would. So, hey, we got it. So we hauled off and started going up to Fritch and got to this man's house to see this horse walker. And it was cheap. It was only like 40 bucks or something. So, you know, hey, it was a bargain. We get there and it's this horse walker. It's big. It's probably about 16 foot across, and it has a motor and it automatically walks the horses, but it doesn't come apart. It was one solid piece of, you know, that big stainless steel pipe, like a big umbrella, had 4 arms on it. And he assumed it came apart, and it didn't. But we bought it anyway. And it did come off the motor base. So I have this big 16-foot, basically stainless steel umbrella that we had to fit somehow in my vehicle or on my trailer, this big 4x8 trailer. And of course we did it. We picked it up and we put the motor base in the trailer, and we oriented that horse walker umbrella part so that it was only hanging out about 8 foot on that side of the road. So we very carefully drove back to Amarillo. Now it's getting late because of all the confusion. There's always something with Fred, and nothing ever, who let's get in the car and go. There's a whole bunch of rigmarole that we'll have to go through. So after we got up there and got it loaded and everything and started heading back, being very careful, hoping not to get seen by any highway patrol or any local police officer. Most of it was highway, because we were way outside of being legally hauling this thing. And if you know the way up there is, there's a lot of canyons, and had to be careful. There's some hills right along the road that you had to like kind of weave out so I wouldn't drag that pole into the wall and just knock the whole thing off. But we headed through town and we got to the edge of town, and we thought, we probably can't drive through Amarillo with this down I-40 and then get on 27 to head out in the country, because we were out between Amarillo and Canyon in the country. So there was this road, and it looked like a really nice road. I mean, it was a dirt road, a caliche road, but it looked okay. So we turned down that road. We were going to go the back way to where we live. And I'm good with that. It's like, we can't take this on the highway. This is going to get us caught in about 5 minutes once we get into Amarillo. So we skirted Amarillo and we went down this caliche road, and it went down about 1.5 miles, and then we had to turn right and get on the other road. And it had rained like a day or two before we went and did this. So that caliche road was really muddy, and we started digging in when I got my truck pulling that trailer, and we got stuck about 1 mile up the road. We were like that deep in mud. Truck wasn't going to go anywhere else. Then all of a sudden the truck stops, just dead on the doornail. Couldn't get it to going. Didn't know what was going on with it. So we had to get out after a lot of fooling with the engine, trying to figure out why in the world it had stopped and why it wouldn't start up again, because it really didn't overheat. So we're now tracking probably 1.5 miles up a muddy road to a Denny's, which is on the far side of the highway, which was out. It wasn't on I-40, but it wasn't too far up out of the way. So we walked up there, made a phone call to a friend of Fred's that had a truck to see if he could come haul us back to Amarillo, or the canyon, really, is between the two. So we sat there and we had dinner and waited for him to show up. And sure enough, finally he shows up. So at least we got a ride back to the truck. He hooked it up. We drug my truck and that trailer and that horse walker another 15 miles out to our place out in the country. Now, by the time we were done, it was 1 o'clock in the morning, and I had to get to work the next morning at 8 a.m. So needless to say, I didn't get much rest, but neither did Fred, because he had to get up and take me to work because now my truck's not running. So all but mundane. It all finally worked out in the end, but nothing ever goes smoothly and nothing is mundane and unexciting when you go deal with Fred. Back to you.
Thank you, John. At this time, we will now move on to our second speakers. So could I please have Dagan introduce Karen Lee?
All right, so Karen Lee is doing a speech, it's titled Possums. It is 5 to 7 minutes. And the purpose of this project is for the member to present a speech on any topic and receive feedback and apply feedback to the second speech. So I guess this is actually, she's already applying the feedback to her speech. And of course, the purpose of her is to just demonstrate that she's applied that feedback that she received from her first speech. So that's it. So yeah, so she's basically taking the feedback from her prior speech and applying it to this speech and see if she can improve on her speech based on her feedback from my speech. Back to you, Toastmaster.
Please help me welcome Karen Lee with Possums. Possums, Karen Lee.
Why did I hate possums? Well, fellow Toastmasters, Mr. Toastmaster and honored guests, I always thought they were ugly. Well, possums are far from mundane. We were having a Toastmasters event, and Dagan Doodlin said that possums help us. I couldn't understand how possums helped us, so I decided to do more research. And I'm going to share a photo with you. Of a possum. Well, possums help us in many ways. They are nocturnal animals, which means they come out at night. The only time that they would come out during the day is if a female possum wanted to feed her young, say in a snowy climate area. They don't stop to share. They usually are out at night. They also are nomads. They keep themselves in one den for 1 to 3 days, and then they move to a different den. The 3 different ways that they affect us, they're good for people, they're also good for the garden, and they're also good. They're the only marsupial that we have in America. According to Joyce Roden in an article dated 6/11/2020, the possums eat insects like cockroaches, rats, mice, ticks. They also eat snails, slugs in the environment. They can withstand up to 80 rattlesnake or cobra snake bites. According to the Opossum Society of America, they are one source of snake anti-venom, so they keep us from dying from snake bites. According to Joyce Feldner, in a 2021 University of Illinois veterinary medicine student, they can eat thousands and thousands of ticks. This keeps us from getting diseases like Rocky Mountain spotted fever and Lyme disease. Since they eat rats and mice and snakes and cockroaches, they keep us from getting many different kinds of diseases. So these possums are far from mundane. Possums are also our only marsupial that we have in the United States of America. They carry their babies in a pouch like the kangaroo. They spend about a couple of months, the babies spend a couple months inside the pouch. And then after 5 months, the mother lets the babies be independent. They usually go out at night. Their only defense mechanism is to play dead. I used to hear an expression when I was little to play possum. This is like the possums playing dead. The only other kind of defense mechanism they have is a hissing sound. They do not make good pets at all. For conclusion, the possums are good for people because they eat ticks that carry diseases such as the Rocky Mountain spotted fever. They're also good for snake venom. They help in the garden because they eat snails, slugs, rats, mice, snakes. And they're our only marsupial in the United States because they carry their young in a pouch, like the kangaroo. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Karen. At this time, please just take a brief moment to write comments to either John or Karen. If you wish to leave them any comments, you may send them in private message. And also, Mark Sims, did our speakers for this evening qualify on time?
Yes, they did. John spoke for 6 minutes, 56 seconds, and Karen for 5 minutes, 44 seconds, both qualified.
Great. At this point then, if you could also send a private message to EPAL, voting for the better of the two speakers between John Vessels and Karen Lee. One additional interesting thing that I think is kind of neat about possums is that if you get bit by a possum, you don't have to worry about going and getting a rabies shot because their body temperature is a degree cooler than what the virus can survive in. So they are not able to carry the rabies virus. Not that you'd want to get bit by possum, but just fun little fact to know. With that, I will now hand our meeting over to our table topics master, Tanya Howard. Tanya.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. So officially, spring begins Saturday, March 20th. Because we live in Texas, sometimes there are signs that spring is coming a little bit sooner, earlier. I have a friend that posted this message that said, when we're in Texas, first there's winter, full spring, second winter, spring of deception, which is where we are right now, third winter, the pollinating, actual spring, summer, hell's front porch, false fall, second summer, and then actual fall. And so that's the seasons that we have here in Texas. So after our Snowmageddon, it was so interesting, like the very next week, everyone was out in their shorts. And so it was so interesting to see just how quickly those signs of spring start coming up. So I would like to know, when do you believe, or what do you believe are the actual signs of spring that let you know, spring is here? Mark Schroeder.
What do I use to tell that that spring is really here? Ooh, that's an interesting question. Certainly one thing is the changes in the stores. When you go into grocery stores and suddenly you start seeing the things on the shelf, the little fluffy things on the shelf that you absolutely positively hate, they're called peeps. Peeps, I don't know why these things exist. I really don't. I do understand, however, why there are dozens and dozens of sites that are devoted to torturing and destroying peeps in all sorts of clever and insane manners. None of these sites are mundane at all. They have everything from torching them with blowtorches, dissolving them with acid, and just name it. If there's a way to destroy a peep of any kind or color, they will destroy the peeps. That's certainly one of the things that I look to tell me that spring is coming. It's always about the same time that Easter is coming on. And I've never really paid any attention to real spring versus fake spring. Somebody was remarking about the fact that there is a spring just because it's the first of the month and there's the official astronomical one, but I don't follow any of that. When it comes to me and whether or not I am looking for whether or not we have a set of conditions that are appropriate for spring, I look for yellow or pink peeps. Madam Table Topics.
Thank you. So Lee had mentioned, he asked the question about a favorite spring break memory. So I have to confess, I'm an educator. We count down to spring break. So that's important to us. So one day, 3 hours and 32 seconds for those of you who are wondering. But, and I love warm weather. And so I do have lots of good memories about spring break, being in Cancun and traveling. I planned for spring break for my kids and me. And so I'm into it. I have to confess, I'm really into it. But I would like to know, why, Paul, do you get a vacation for the spring, or do you have a spring break or vacation time at this time? Something that you would enjoy doing, or if you did, what would you like to do? Why, Paul?
Thank you, Miss Table Topics Master. So I actually, unfortunately, do not have spring breaks anymore, probably for the last 4 years I have not had spring break. Basically, since school has been over, I have lost that luxury. So my spring break time, where normally I would be able to do fun stuff, is now a little bit more mundane than it used to be. I do remember a good memory that I have from spring break a couple years ago when I actually went to Mexico City. It was kind of a spontaneous trip. A friend who I'd just met probably a month prior to that, was interested in traveling, and we kind of were just talking about wanting to explore more of the world and not having as much time being in school. And because we had the same break, we kind of spontaneously decided to just book a trip to Mexico City. And it ended up being one of the most fun experiences that I've actually had. And we were able to explore the culture in Mexico and meet new people. And for me, I've explored a lot in the US and I've lived in many different states, which I talked about in a speech a couple weeks ago, but I hadn't done very much international traveling. So it was one of the first times I'd actually left the country and had a good experience there, and kind of opened my eyes to doing more traveling and exploring, which hopefully I can do when I have further breaks in the future. So while I do not have dedicated spring breaks anymore, I think it's still something that I look back to, and I enjoy those memories. And hopefully in the future, I can find other times to create some more memories. Back to you, Miss Table Topics Master.
Thank you. So we are going to spring forward this weekend. And every time this comes around, there are legislators that are always wanting to put bills out there that says we should do away with this daylight savings, or we should only have daylight savings. So Lee King, do you have a thought on the topic of should we have daylight savings times, or should we just keep it the regular time, keep daylight savings times and not go back and forth?
Definitely not a mundane topic. You want to get lawmakers to talk about something that is absolutely pointless but see yet a passionate debate. It's a great question. Do we keep changing our clocks, or do we set it to one time zone and keep it for the rest of the year? Oddly enough, I believe the last legislative session here in Texas, that did come up. And if I remember correctly, it came close to passing, but there was not enough time to completely finish the discussion. Therefore, it was tabled. And I'm not so, it might actually supposed to come up again this time around. I'm not positive on that. I personally feel like at this point, we could just pick one or the other and keep it all year round, because in the whole grand scheme of things, there are only going to be 24 hours in a day. That does not change. And like it or not, the sun is going to end up being equal at some point in the time. In the middle of winter, then it's always going to be more dark out than light, no matter what time zone or whatever the clock is set at. Likewise, in the middle of the summer, there's going to be more light than there is dark. So here in Texas, I really don't see the point in continuing to have to worry about changing the time. I do know that part of the reason has to do with energy, but perhaps that might actually help our utility companies that could not quite pull off a snowstorm. Back to you, Madam Tabletop Manager.
Thank you. So I feel also that a new season is coming on because they are ramping up vaccines. More people are now being qualified. This week, educators could get a shot. Next week, 50 and older are going to be eligible for a shot. Last Thursday, I got my first shot, and all of a sudden I started thinking about all the things that I'm going to do very soon. When I get my second shot, I'm going to go hug some people. I'm going to go see my dad, who I hadn't seen in a year, and so I can't wait. So Nish, what's something that you're looking forward to when we get out of this pandemic, or we get control of the pandemic?
Good morning, everybody. When this pandemic is over, I want to enjoy my social life. I'm fed up of this mundane life, which I've been living for the past 1.5 years. Going to my office and home. I don't interact with people. Earlier, I used to go and attend marriage. Earlier, I used to go, is suppose any of my beloved one, their relative, something bad has happened with them. But now I can't go because of my fear that I should not be infected with COVID-19. I stopped wearing masks for the past 20 days. I tried my level best that I should keep this COVID-19 at arm's length. But now I think sometime the people, those who didn't bother about this COVID-19 at the time when it was peak, nothing has happened to me, to them. What is going to happen to me? But still, if I have to travel, I can't wear a mask sitting on a plane. I can't wear a mask when I go to some other city where I have to go to the restaurant wearing a mask, because there are some other countries, some other cities, if I go, the rules are strict. But within my city, I stopped wearing it. I'm not going for vaccinating because some of the cases when I hear in my country that after getting vaccinated, they had some side effect. A couple of days ago, there was one person who was vaccinated. He went to one shop to do the shopping and he fell down. I would see the results after 6 months. I would go for vaccinated, not now. Till then, I will not travel. I will not go to any restaurant, but wherever I go, I'll try that I should keep people at arm's length, but I am not going to wear mask. I'm fed up with this thing. Whenever I wear a mask, my beard goes haywire. So I do not want to wear a mask, and I do not want to hug people also. I'll wait for a few months, then I'll hug people. Then I'll go for social gathering. Over to the Toastmaster, please.
Thank you. Very good. So I'm going to ask our timekeeper if everyone qualified on time.
Yes, everyone qualified. Mark Schroeder spoke 1 minute, 38 seconds. E. Paul, 1 minute, 46 seconds. Lee, 1 minute, 54 seconds. And Munish spoke 2 minutes, 23 seconds and was within the grace period.
Okay, and our grammarian, did everyone use the word of the day, mundane?
Everyone used the word of the day.
So we are now, I will call on the vote for the best table topics. We had Mark Schroeder, who talked about the signs of spring. Lee King, who talked about if we should have daylight savings or not. Y. Paul, if he had spring break or his spring break memories. And then Manish, what he's looking forward to after we have control of the pandemic. If you will send your vote to our vote keeper, who is
People.
who will send a vote to, I'm sorry.
E. Paul.
Yeah, vote counter is equal.
Thank you. And now I will turn it over to our general evaluator for the evening.
All right, thank you so much. Let me bring up a copy of the agenda in the background real quickly. So I'm going to be the general evaluator tonight. My duties are various, but they are certainly not mundane. Among other things, I will be doing a general evaluation of the meeting as a whole. I will also be calling on both of our speech evaluators tonight to give a rendition of how they thought our speakers did tonight on their speeches. And we'll also hear from all of our duty holders tonight with regard to the minor roles of things like the odd counter and Grammarian, etc. First up, we're going to go ahead and call on our speech evaluators. We've had 2 speakers and 2 evaluators. The first speaker, of course, was John Vessels. His evaluator is Rob Giles. Please welcome, if you will, Rob Giles for his evaluation of John's speech.
Thank you very much, Mr. General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and especially you, John. Tonight, I'm going to give you a few points that I thought you did really well at. A couple of things that I thought you might think about changing or incorporating in your next speech. And finally, something that I really liked regarding your speech. The first thing that I want to talk about is your opening and talking about Fred and saying that I'm going to tell you about one of his adventure or one of your misadventures with him, which gave us the idea that there's many misadventures with him, which is it set the tone. It set the tone what Fred was like, and it set the tone that probably there was maybe some fun involved there, or at least something that was interesting. So I thought that you did a great job with setting up your story. And then this next thing I thought you did really well was that you told the story in a chronological way. And obviously, a lot of times that's the easiest way to do it. And you might say the correct way to do it, depending upon how you want to impact everybody. But you did a great job with creating some anticipation. You talked about the pipe not coming apart, and that started us to think about, all right, where is this going to go? So I thought you set everything up good there. It brings the audience in and grabs their attention. And you talked further along how you had to go through hills and canyons. And then when you finally headed out, you went on this dirt road. But guess what? That led up to the next suspense, which was that you ran into mud. And eventually your truck could not get through that mud. So you had some suspense and you had that leading up to what would be the conclusion. So I thought you gradually gained some suspense and anticipation, which a good story will do, especially if it's there for that, for the excitement, for the interest, which the story really was. Now, a couple of things that I thought that you really could think about was one, that really simply, you said that I'm not sure at the beginning, I'm not sure whether I told this story before, you may have heard it. If you're going to say something like that, maybe make it a little bit more of part of the story as a lead-in. Otherwise, leave it out entirely. The other thing that I was thinking about was, although you did have a little bit of vocal variety, I thought you could have been a little bit more dramatic with it. You could have really just really exaggerated some of the things. You talked about when you walked, we had to walk because your truck was stuck. And you should have said, we walked, or something along those lines. And you could have incorporated things like that with vocal variety, I thought, and it could have enhanced the speech a little bit. So that's something you might want to think about. The climax seemed a little bit flat for me, but it was definitely there. You reached there, you got home late, and the next day was not going to be fun. So that was basically the ending. I thought that the closing that you had was good, though. I thought that you basically came back and said, this was just one of many adventures or misadventures with Fred. So you gave it back to the beginning and what we wanted to see about your friend Fred and your situations with him and your adventures with him. So I thought overall you did a fantastic job. Thank you very much, John. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you so much, Rob. Our second speaker tonight was Karen Lee. Karen's evaluator for this evening was Dagan Newland. Dagan, if you are ready, please come off mute and give your evaluation for Karen.
All right. Thank you, Karen, for this pretty good speech about possums. I'm going to do a 3-2-1 method. 3 things I like, 2 things to improve on, and 1 thing I really liked. So the first thing I liked, you did have an initial good opening. You talked about the possum and that the possum is good, got us, thinking about, why, got me thinking about, well, why is the possum good? Then, and throughout the speech, you kind of went over things like, talked about why they're good, and that they ate insects, and why eating insects were good, because insects cause diseases and things like that. So that's another thing I liked. And overall, and talked about how they're born too. It's the only marsupial in the United States. They produce their baby, they keep their babies in a pouch. So, and also I actually learned something that I did not know this piece about, that they could take rattlesnake bites and and still survive those. I did not know that piece. But a couple things I'd like for you to improve on is that I know you had a little difficulty there sharing the screen. So maybe in the future, if you want to share a screen, if you could practice with somebody beforehand, like Mark or Rob or even I, could set up a Zoom call and you could practice with that, just to get that down a little more pat. And the other thing was, you could have expanded on some facts about possums, because you did miss some good facts that you did not mention. For example, Lee mentioned that they don't get rabies, they can't spread rabies. So it's probably good key facts that you could have expanded on as well. And of course, the one thing I really liked is really the whole speech, and overall, you had a pretty good timeline. You like the beginning, had a good opening. You talked about the possum is good. Then you went into the reasons why the possums are good. They eat ticks, insects, and they also eat, explained why that's good, because insects and things like that have diseases. So and plus, by eating insects and stuff like that, you don't have all that, like if you have dogs and stuff, like ticks, ticks and fleas get on dogs, and so if you have possums around your neighborhood, they keep that way as well. So overall, the flow of it was really good, So overall, I think it was really great. And I'll send you a recap by email. So thank you, Karen, for that speech. Back to you, General Evaluator.
Great. Thank you, Dagan.
Oh, and I want to say one thing. Manoush I mentioned that I have a mask that did not mess my beard up, so I'm going to put it on so he can see it. That's what it's like.
There you
It's
go.
a very mask. It's not a mask. I think it's you have covered your face with the hanky.
Yeah, the normal masks definitely do not fit on a bearded face, that's for sure. All right, so let's see. We have now had both of our evaluators. I need to call on our timer for how our evaluators did on their times. Timer is Mark Sims. How did we do?
Dagan qualified at 3 minutes and 1 second. Rob went a little over at 3 minutes, 47 seconds.
Okay, so at that point, we will not have a vote for best of the evaluators. That is going to go to Dagan Newland. All right, at this point, I've got a choice between doing my evaluation and calling on the evaluators. Excuse me, not evaluators, the duty holders. I think I'm going to go ahead and call on the duty holders tonight. Our first duty holder of the evening is going to be our grammarian, Mark Sims. Are you prepared to do your grammarian report, Mark?
Yes, I am.
All right, please do.
I did not hear any really grammatical lapses tonight. I did hear that there is very good usage of the word of the day. Everyone used it in table topics. And it's interesting because, again, it's not a word that you would want to apply to yourself, but again, the excellent usage. John used it in his speech. Karen used it in her speech. And Mark Schroeder also used it. And I also heard several interesting phrases or discussion topics tonight. I think early on when Lee was talking about some college kids not being able to have spring break, He said their universities would be afraid that, I think he used the word, they might conglomerate, which maybe I got that wrong, but that was interesting. And John Vessels was a prize tonight because I'd never heard of a horse walker, which was akin to a 16-foot stainless steel umbrella. And a few times he said caliche road, which, man, I had no idea. Now he threw in a more mundane one, deader than a doornail, but hey, you know, what can you say? Karen, you correctly used the term marsupial, but it's just a word you don't use every day. You conjured up an incredible image talking about the possums that can withstand a lot of rattlesnake or cobra bites. And those scenes in the movies, especially the old Western where someone gets bit by a rattlesnake, I always have to look away. So thanks for that, by the way. Tanya Howard mentioned a lot of phrases, including the spring of deception and snowmageddon, which definitely we can relate to. And Mark Schroeder, in his table topics response, this is amazing, talked about destroying peeps with acid. So that is something, again, you don't hear every day. But thank you to everyone who livened up the evening, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you so much. And yeah, you don't hear about it every day, but boy, I sure wish you did. I hate peeps. I would normally, since I'm one of the minor duty holders, put myself last, but because you happen to mention Caliche Road, I'm going to go ahead and jump in. Caliche Road is probably, I suspect, Agan, correct me if I'm wrong, a road made of caliche rock, which is a white, almost limestoney looking rock that is very typical in Texas. Is that about correct?
Yep.
Okay.
They use it on all the country roads. It's made into a, a powder. And
That's what I thought, because we had caliche where I grew up, and it's one of the, I have to admit, I do not know how to spell the word, but I know exactly what it is, and I was trying to pay attention to ahs and ums, and when you said Caliche Road, I completely lost what I was looking for with regard to ahs and ums in your speech. So it was very distracting, but because it was so memorable and so evocative for me. Let's see, so let me go ahead and do the counters report, and I will start with you, John. Of course, like I say, Caliche Road made a lot of things go straight out of my head. The one thing that I did notice during yours was I noticed a fair amount of so's. You start an awful lot of sentence with so's. Yeah, you kind of used to it. Some of them even might have been run-on sentences because of how many so's. Not everyone by any means. There are a lot of times that you do stop, but be careful because you do use a lot of so's. I also noticed, this is kind of in between grammarian and counter, I saw or heard you say like a day or two before. Either was a day or two before or wasn't a day or two before, but it was probably not like a day or two before. You could have elided the words like or like a. Next, I noticed, Dagan, small handful of ums. We got to break you of no. Yeah, I noticed some no's, and then I started to write so to put account for so's and decided I needed to move it further to the right because I needed more space. By the time I was done, I think I missed a few. I've got 25 no's. So we're going to have to work on that a little bit and try to get that down to at least, let's cut it in half first. We'll try to do that first. Karen, as far as I could tell, on ahs, ums, and other verbal crutches, completely clean. That was very, very good. Tanya, you started off with a so, with the phrase so officially, and you could have just started off with officially. You have a tendency to start some of your sentences as well with so. I noticed 3 ums, another additional so, and interestingly enough, I noticed the combination of so and so. You have 2 or 3 of those, so be careful with that particular combination. Lee, you were clean. Munish, as far as I can tell, you were 100% clean. If you hit any of these, I did not hear any. And I think Mark Sims was clean as well. That's going to conclude my report as counter. With that, our next duty holder is going to be our posture monitor. Our posture monitor is Cheryl. Cheryl, tell us what you saw tonight in the way of posture.
John Vessels, I saw that you had a very expressive face and a good use of hand gestures throughout the entire speech, especially when you were measuring the trailer. And I only noticed one long hand touch, and I didn't know if it was kind of long. So I don't know if you're scratching or if that was a nervous gesture, but that's all I saw, and it was very good. And Karen Lee, it was a bit distracting when you were trying to find the possum photo, but well worth it once we saw it. And a few times you moved your hands in front of the camera, so it covered your face. So that was a bit distracting. And that's all I saw.
All right. Thank you so much, Cheryl. I think at this point, that concludes all of our duty holders for tonight. The next thing to be covered is going to be for me to do the meeting as a whole, what I saw as general evaluator. I don't have a whole lot of comments tonight. I do have a few, but I don't have a whole lot, partially just because of having to do ahs and ums at the same time. That does take away some of your time and focus when you're trying to do both duties. We did start on time for the most part. We were pretty close to starting on time. I was certainly happy within, a minute or two of our usual start time. Rob, I am going to get on you when I say something like, I need a good cue as to when to start the recording, and you say, okay. Okay is not the cue, trust me. And that's all I got. And then you started in on it. So we missed the first couple of words of this meeting, as anybody who listens to this meeting will notice. So give me a better cue next time. Word of the day use. I thought we had very good word of the day use, and mundane is a very good word. It is a word that people will use. It's not something that you will not hear at all. So it's pretty typical. And we had both of our speakers work it into their speeches tonight without knowing that was coming up. So that was a big plus. Karen, yes, I'm going to make a similar comment on the possum picture. I think one of the things that might have helped that at least would have been to have the possum picture up and ready, since you knew you wanted to show it. And at least I think you knew that you had it, were going to show it. Maybe that was a last minute change, but if you know you're going to show something, you can usually have it up, even if it's minimized, and pop it up real quick, have it the right size so that it's ready to go. That would be one of my biggest recommendations. As far as the rest of the button hitting, you'll get used to that quick. But it will help if you have the visual already ready to go rather than having to search for it and resize it. A few comments for our evaluators tonight, because our evaluators do not get a whole lot of feedback. If you would like to leave our evaluators some feedback in the chat, please do so separately directly to them. But I will do a couple of comments here. Rob, let's see. I really like the detail, the level of detail, and the fact that you called out specific things that they were talking about. When you were talking about the pipe coming apart and how it was something that was grabbing your attention, the hills and the canyons and the dirt road, all of the descriptions that went there, and how that was building suspense. You, in effect, you talked about the speech without re-giving the speech. That's one of the things that we emphasize here. You don't want to re-give their speech, but it's fine to list parts of their speech and describe how that made you feel or how you felt it was building toward the story. You also offered suggestions for improvement, which we always want, and you provided some good examples like the issue of the walk that was being taken. And left the speaker on a high note, because we like to always leave our speaker on the positive if we can do that. Dagan, you said right up front that you were going to do a 3-2-1 approach, which you then followed on through very well. The same sort of thing. You did some very, very good examples of what had been accomplished during the speech and how effective those particular items of the speech were. And again, I thought you again left on a high note, leaving our speaker feeling positive. Finally, let's see, Mark Sims. I just happened to notice going through the duty holders, I particularly appreciated the good detail in your report tonight. You had a lot of things that you had seen that you pointed out, and the detail I thought was outstanding tonight. So I just wanted to give you kudos for that. That's going to close my duties as general evaluator. Since we do not have a vote for the best of the two evaluators because of a disqualification, The only thing that I have left to do is a vote for the best of the big three. If you would, please place a vote to EPAL for the for the best of the big three, which is going to be either our Toastmaster, Lee King, our Table Topics Master for this evening, Tanya Howard, or myself as General Evaluator, Mark Schroeder. I'll give everybody just a moment to do that. And hint, Mark, seems you're going to be up next. So be ready. All right. Also, since I'm the one who usually has talked with some of our guests, I do want to appreciate all of our guests that are here tonight. Our guests, of course, being from me, who is somebody that I talked to earlier in the week, Michael Friedman, who I talked to here very, very recently, and returning guest, Muniz. Thank you all so much for joining us again tonight. All right, Mark Sims, take it away.
And thank you to everyone. What we're going to do is briefly get to know our first time guest, and the rest of the business topics will be deferred just a few minutes to a club business meeting, officers meeting. And everyone that's a member of the club is welcome to join the officers meeting. Definitely I'd like all the officers to stay, and we'll go over a few items. But right now, for starters, Michael Friedman, I believe, was a first-time guest. So Michael, I'd appreciate if you could tell us a little about yourself, what Toastmasters can do for you, and how you enjoyed the meeting.
All right, thank you for that, Mark. My name's Michael. I heard about Toastmasters through my parents, actually. Both did Toastmasters when they first started working. I'm currently in sales. I work for an IT services company in Plano, Texas, called Origina. I wanted to join Toastmasters to really help me with my craft, I guess, so to speak, help me with my tone, my inflection, so I don't come off mundane to some of these people that I talk to. So very happy to be here. I thought the speeches were great. I thought the table topics were great. The feedback was extraordinary. And I really appreciate everyone welcoming me.
Thank you. And please do come back, because we hear that so often. People want to join Toastmasters. It'll help them in their job, and it does. I believe it's benefited me. Definitely, we appreciate the fact that your parents gave an endorsement. So that's a great intro. So please do come back, and we're hoping one of these days, when it's safe, when it's appropriate, that we'll be back at our home at Azonas, and you can come and see us in person. And Miss Funmi, please tell us a little about yourself, how you like the meeting, and what we can do for you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Funmi, and I am originally from Lagos, Nigeria. I was formerly in Lighthouse Toastmasters, Lagos, Nigeria, before relocating down back here. Currently, I'm in school, and I just remember I was doing my graduate program, and then I just didn't have too much time. But then I realized I definitely need to get back, and this meeting just reminded me of everything I missed and everything I like about Toastmasters. The feedback, the improving my speak, the way I speak. And I just realized I definitely need to get back into Toastmasters. So I'm glad I joined this evening. Thank you all.
Thank you. And thank you for being here tonight. And that is great that you had Toastmasters experience. So a lot of the things we were doing then, you totally got. So we appreciate you being with us. Please do, again, come back, visit us on Zoom. And like I mentioned to Michael, we're hoping eventually when it's safe for you to join us in person. So both Michael and Ms. Funmi, please do, and I said, and I shouldn't have, but please do stay with us, and we would certainly love to have you as members. And at this time, since we're going to defer some of the business items to the meeting, I would like to ask Paul to please tell us who the winners of the competitions were.
Thank you, Mark. Wow, you guys really made me work at my somewhat easy job. It was an extremely close vote for all three categories. So for the first category of prepared speeches, the winner was John Vessels. And for table topics, also very close, but the winner was Mark Schroeder. And for the big three, another very close one, also Mark Schroeder. Congratulations to everybody.
Thank you, Paul. And before we head off to the officers meeting, is there anything maybe that any of the guests or any of the other members who aren't going to hang around for the officers meeting want to bring up or have a question about? Rob.
I would just like to mention every Saturday I have the member orientation. Normally it's at 10 a.m. This Saturday it will be at 2 p.m. So if anybody would like to join, it will be at 2 p.m. I will send out an email with the link again this evening. That's all, Mr. President.
Thank you. And thank you for bringing that up, Rob, so that way everyone gets to hear it. And let's see. If there is not anything else, we can conclude with the club meeting, and then here in a few seconds, once we wound down the recording, move to the officers meeting. Thank you.
Hearing no dissent, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording in 3, 2,